I just bought the cheapest CJ5 on Facebook Marketplace, and I paid too much. Probably forgetting something. It'll be fine. This isn't overkill at all. Stroking. Definitely felt better with the lube. Nope, there we go. Obviously, we don't want this perfect. I almost fit in this thing. That's what a Jeep's supposed to look like. I'm sure nothing will go wrong. All it needs is everything. The tires are bald. The tub's got more holes in it than a Secret Service security plan. It's only got enough wiring in it to run and charge. It won't turn more than 2,000 RPM, and it's got one brake. But technically, it runs and drives, just like the ad said. It said the body was rough, but not gone. 100% disagree. There's not a body panel on this Jeep that isn't bent, bondoed, or rusted through. And I'm fairly certain that that's metal roofing. I wouldn't take this tub if you tried to give it to me. It's kind of like that girl you used to date. Fun to look at, but rotten on the inside. These things are a dime a dozen, and I probably should have walked away from this one. I offered the guy $1,500 for it, sight unseen. Probably should have looked at it first. The reality of it is, I really bought this for a parts Jeep. It's not what you see that I wanted, it's what's underneath. It's a Dauntless V6, a T18 4-speed, and a Dana 18 transfer case with a PTO. That's right, I said it, PTO. Let me give you a little history lesson on Jeeps. When Jeeps were first introduced to civilians, they were marketed as farm implements. That's right, like a tractor. They weren't intended to be road vehicles. They were intended to stay on the farm. They had a 4-cylinder engine that made double-digit horsepower. Not enough to push it down the road over about 45, 50 miles an hour. They also had a power takeoff, PTO, on the transfer case. The shaft could come through the front and operate a PTO-driven winch, or it could come out the rear to operate a number of implements, like wood splitters, hay cutters, or margarita mixers, whatever. So the 4-cylinder was enough to get the job done. In 1966, the Buick Dauntless 225 V6 became an option. That pretty much doubled the horsepower. So all of a sudden you could drive a Jeep on the road and keep up. So here's the interesting thing about a Jeep. If you ordered a Jeep in 1970, this is how it came. No roll bar, no top, no doors. And it would have had a standard 4-cylinder and 3-speed transmission. And if you were a baller, you could spring for the V6 and the T18 4-speed like in this Jeep. And that's why I bought it. Once the V6 was an option, it became the most popular engine to have in a Jeep. So it's not rare. The T18 4-speed isn't rare either, but it is uncommon. Most Jeeps had a 3-speed. So if you're planning on doing any off-roading with one of these early CJs, you're gonna wanna look for one with a 4-speed. A V6 is just icing on the cake. So that's it. Ratty CJ5, 225 V6, T18, 4-speed transmission, running and driving, barely, for $1,500. Now the reality of it is, it's probably not worth what I paid for it, but it also wasn't worth walking away from. I had the money, I had the trailer, I was there, so I brought it home. It's a turd, but I'm gonna polish it before I part it out. So here's the plan. First thing we're gonna do is make it run and stop properly. I think all we're gonna need to do is rebuild the carburetor. Not a big deal, pretty easy. I'm sure I can find a way to screw it up. It needs to stop, so I'm gonna go ahead and do new brakes all the way around. I'm gonna put a new seat in the back, new wheels and tires because these rub constantly and they're not period correct. I like tall skinnies on these early Jeeps. The electrical system on this thing is so hacked up that it'll never be roadworthy without being completely rewired. And the tub is so trash that I would never waste the time to do that on this body. So I'm just gonna spend time and money on things that we can always use on another Jeep without wasting any time or money on the tub. Seems like the smart thing to do. Of course, the smart thing to do would have been to walk away, but here we are. Let's get to it. Well, I got the Cummins out of the way and I got the Jeep in the garage. Man, this thing's short. I like it. Well, let's go ahead and start this where every old car project starts. Carburetor rebuild. According to the interweb, it's a Rochester 2-barrel, 2G, I don't know, we'll see. Jeep Dauntless V6. Says it right there, and I believe it. Probably wouldn't hurt to replace that, but we'll just run it. Vacuum hose, return spring, fuel line with a kink in it. That's always good. That pops right off. Should probably plug that. Yeah, that fitting's rounded off, so that's great. Okay. Well, this is great. This is how I like to start one. Stripped off fuel fitting. This is not going well. I feel like I should have started with something that I would have been successful at. In case you're wondering, that does taste like old gas, so go ahead and put the All-Tints wrench on there. Vice grips. I've got gas on my eyelid and it burns. Don't know that I've ever said that before. I'm saying it now. Gas on the eyelid burns. I feel like we're gonna need to put a new fitting on there. Don't think I have one. 1/2 inch all day. I got a feeling I'm not gonna have to get into my metric wrenches on this one very often. I wanted to make sure my extension was long enough. My ogre hands are not going in that spot. Did you guys notice the wire nut on my coil wire? It's custom. All right, we got a rebuild kit. But before I try to do that, I want to go ahead and blow it apart and let it soak in the parts dip for a little while. So we hit our first stopping point with the carburetor. The power valve got a little boogered up when I was taking it out, so I don't really want to reuse that. And we've got an idle mixture screw that has a pretty good bend in it, so I don't want to reuse that unless I have to. So it's going to take a few days for those parts to show up. So in the meantime, we can take a look at the brakes and get the brake parts on order. If you're not already aware, early CJs don't have the master cylinder on the firewall like normal cars. It's actually mounted under the floorboard where it's really fun to work on. We've only got one brake working, but the master cylinder is full of fluid, so I don't think that's the issue. So I'm going to disassemble a few wheels and drums and see what we've got going on. Glorious drum brakes. Let me get some gloves before I get tetanus. I ain't trying to get my heart rate up, but here I am, living the dream. I just need some things in there to break, then it'll come apart. Okay, there we go. It's a drum, and it's crusty, but it appears to be the one that's working. All right. Not going crazy with the brakes. All I'm really doing is replacing the wheel cylinders and removing the adjuster, cleaning it, lubricating it, and adjusting the brakes. Then I'm going to do a full rebuild with the skeet skeet and resurface the drums with some black spray paint. No, not the right paint, just cheap black Rust-Oleum, because that's what I had. I really wanted to replace the soft line, but if you look at this hard line, you can tell that as soon as I put a wrench on that fitting, it's going to twist the line off. If I was putting it on the road or putting it in any hardcore off-road situations, I'd redo the whole brake system, but I don't think this chassis is ever going to see that kind of action, so I don't want to spend the time and money to do it. So we're just going to pray that all that holds. Now on the front brakes, there is a small pre-bent hard line that goes between the wheel cylinder and the soft line. And it certainly twisted itself into 4 pieces when I was trying to remove the wheel cylinder. So I did end up having to buy 2 of these. And I think I had to get these from Quadratech or something. This brake's already ready to put back together. I've already got it adjusted. I did have a wheel lug start spinning in the hub. I tried to JB weld it because I'm a hack. Didn't work out too well, so I just took it out. 4 out of 5 is good enough for now. All right, let's go look at the rear. Pretty good sized wasp's nest in there. And yes, I do buy this stuff 5 gallons at a time. These are a little pricey. I think they're about 50 or 60 bucks, but I've had good luck with it. And 5 gallons of brake cleaner at a time, it's good value. Highly recommend. Links in the description. So, cool thing about this Jeep's, the brakes are pretty much identical all the way around. So as long as one of them's assembled, you'll know how everything goes. There's no parking brake or any of that jazz on these things, so they're actually really simple. Not gonna lie, that's a little floppy for my liking. It'll be fine. Just gonna soak these adjusters in something that looks like gas. But due to YouTube safety rules, I promise you that's not gasoline. It's a non-flammable cleaning solution. Well, this rear line's obviously been replaced at some point. It came off pretty easy. I can't see nothing. Where's the bolts? Oh, right there. There it is. Well, that's unfavorable. Get off. Let's just take it all the way out. Let's be smart about this, Jamin. Eject. There we go. You just fancy a brake tool for something it's not designed for. There it is. 1 wheel cylinder. Don't want to shortchange my rebuild here. Where's my bolts? Of course, that one's still stuck in there. It's almost like these things are metric. Surely not. Going to the vise. Not gonna lie, this thing could use some new bolts, but it ain't happening today. I feel like somebody made this line, thinking it wasn't pre-bent. But as long as it holds fluid, it's good enough for this rig. Go ahead and crack this open. Let it be gravity bleeding while we do other things. Is this metric? It's freaking metric. Blasphemy. That ain't it. Is it a 10? 10 seems, nope, not 10. It's not that either. How about an 8? We'll call it 8. Anywho, crack that open. Let it gravity bleed for a little while. All right, I got the adjuster and all the springs back on there. I use these highly specialized 25-year-old Craftsman pliers. I'm gonna go through a few iterations of trying to squeeze this on there and tightening the adjuster up until it just about won't fit. If you're wondering how to adjust these things to get them just right, you want to spread the adjuster out so much that you have to beat the drum on with a dead blow hammer. Yeah. Then pry it back off with a crowbar, loosen it up a little bit, and then put it back on by hand. That's pretty much perfect. Or just tighten it to the point where you don't have to beat it on with a dead blow. That's probably the smart way to do it. Let's go ahead and bleed the brakes over here on the passenger side before we move over to the driver's side. Most folks think bleeding brakes has to be a two-man job. It does not. You don't need any special tools and you don't need another body. If your wife's like mine, she don't want to have anything to do with this. So I'm gonna show you how to do it solo. All you need, step 1, make sure the master cylinder's full. And by the way, the fluid in your master cylinder shouldn't look like this. If it does, flush the whole system, like I'm about to do. Either way, all you need, a piece of tube that fits on your bleeder pretty snugly. You need a container, put a couple inches of fluid in it. Doesn't matter if it's water, motor oil, brake fluid. Then just stick the hose underneath the fluid level. Then just start pumping the brake, and it'll pump the air and fluid out into this container, and it's not able to suck any air back up into the wheel cylinder. As long as you keep the master cylinder full of fluid while you're doing this, it'll bleed just fine. I'm gonna sit you out here on the ground next to the jar so y'all can watch this whole thing unfold. Definitely a little low on fluid. We've been gravity bleeding for a couple days. So we gotta keep her topped off. You want to make sure you overfill the master cylinder and spill it all over the floor. Better too much than not enough. That's what I always say. There, that'll almost work. Seeing bubbles. I'm gonna call that bled. If I can just get my bleeder closed here. Let me go check and see if I got good pedal. And well, I don't have good pedaling. And that actually makes perfect sense because the passenger side doesn't have any drums on it. So it's nothing to press against, idiot. All right, we moved on to the passenger side. It's pretty crusty. I had to refill my old skeet jug here. Interestingly enough, it shouldn't surprise me that a company that sells subpar brake tools on Amazon puts gloves in the toolkit that are allergic to brake cleaner. Smart. Back to the rebuild. Y'all just pretend I'm wearing safety glasses. Great. It definitely needs a good cleaning. It's actually fairly, no, it's gummed up. Oh, no. Well, that sucks. Let's just cut it with something that'll actually cut it. This isn't overkill at all. All right, now let's see if we can't just put a socket or something on here and salvage that. I got low hopes though. Easy does it. What could possibly go wrong here? Never doubted it for a second. That crunching sound you're hearing is the line twisting itself off. If you get on Rock Auto and you try to order wheel cylinders for a 1970 CJ5, it'll try to say the same part for both sides on the front. Don't let it fool you. It won't work. So I have to clean these adjusters up before I put them back in so they don't get sticky. For cleaning the barrel, I like to use a barrel brush. Pretty sure this came in a Glock. I'm not sure who actually cleans a Glock, but that's what I use. A substance that smells and tastes like gas, but isn't gas, because that wouldn't be safe. According to the interweb, the best thing to lube these adjusters is the silver anti-seize. Little goes a long ways. Want to make sure you lube the tip too. Nice. How is this possible? That's literally one drop of anti-seize. we hit a snag. So apparently this is not the right brake line, which is why it's looped around and doesn't have the little tabs to hold it in the holders. And I can live with that. The problem is this section of the line is too long. So this fitting isn't long enough to bottom out the flare into the bottom of this fitting, so it'll always leak. So I've got to replace this, which means I will likely destroy the hard line behind this. Fortunately, that section of hard line is only like 6 or 8 inches long, and it's got a couple bends. It goes directly from here up into a distribution block behind this fender well, so I can bend a new one up fairly easily if it breaks. So I was able to get the soft line off without breaking the hard line. Chances of getting it all back together without it breaking are pretty slim. So since this is still intact, I'm gonna go ahead and use it as a template and bend up a new hard line to go with a new soft line on this side. Which isn't gonna happen today because I gotta order it. But we can still throw all the hardware back together. We just won't have any hydraulic continuity today. That's okay, because I kinda wanna break anyway. Break, get it? It's a joke, it's a pun. Got new wheel cylinders, need new drums. They look new-ish. All right, while we're waiting on the brakes, we can try and throw this carburetor back together. I got a new power valve in there. I've got new idle mixture screws there. I've got a fresh accelerator pump on there. And I probably used the right gaskets. I got the float adjusted properly, probably. And now I gotta see if I can make all these parts go back together and this thing actually run. So this thing had an automatic choke on it, which is really cool. The problem is, you need a heat source to heat up the thermostat. And normally it would come off your passenger side exhaust manifold, and I have headers. So I no longer have a heat source for this thing. So I'm just gonna delete it and use a universal manual choke kit. Seems like the right thing to do. Manual, reliable. Now I'm not gonna do a detailed rebuild and assembly video because honestly, there's already some really good ones out there on the interweb. I'll actually leave a link in the description to a really good 2-part series on how to rebuild a Rochester 2J or 2-jet carburetor. Probably forgetting something. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And one of these is not like the others, and I'm gonna call it that one. I'm sure I'll find something I forgot once I get this all put back together. It's inevitable. I'll make sure everything still moves freely while you're tightening stuff down. Make sure nothing's in a bind. All right, I've got it bolted together. That's the easy part. Now I got to figure out where all these linkages go. Great. Well, as you can see, the carburetor's installed. I've got a pretty janky Dorman universal choke hooked up. And if I were a good YouTube mechanic, I would have showed you the first start after the rebuild. But I'm not a good YouTube mechanic, and I failed you once again, but that's okay. The reality of it is, as soon as fuel got to the bowl, it just sparked right off. It happened so fast I didn't know how to react. It's not because I'm good at building carbs. A 2-jet Rochester is just that simple and effective. But anyway, that was a day ago. It's stone cold right now, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit the skinny pedal, choke it, turn it over, see if it'll fire again. I almost fit in this thing. Almost. All right. Clutch, go pedal, choke. Now we obviously need to do some tuning on it, but it fires right off. Purrs like a kitten. A kitten with a hole in the passenger side muffler. We'll take that up. All right, it shows basically no vacuuming. That's bad. Maybe we're on the ported vacuum and not manifold. Let's turn our idle screws a little bit and see what happens. See if we can get a rise in our RPM. Half in. These are not in a great place. That's not working. Let's go out a little bit. Let's bump the idle a little bit. 3/8 maybe? 1/10 wrench. Now we should be doing this hot, but I'm just getting an initial adjustment. We'll have to revisit all this again once the engine's warmed up. Assuming the engine warms up. I think maybe our accelerator pump's lagging a little bit, so I'm gonna twist on that rod a little bit and see if I can bring it in a little earlier. Cause she ain't happy. I think we've had a little success. This is after about 5 minutes of tuning. Fires right up, idles like a champ. It had a stumble when you hit the throttle, so I assumed the accelerator pump was out of adjustment. The way you adjust the accelerator pump on this Rochester Carb is the rod that goes between the throttle linkage and the pump linkage, you can bend it or straighten it to time the pump. I straightened it out, and now the pump comes in a lot sooner. Much better. Not perfect, but better. I've got manifold vacuum off the back of the carb here. I'm really not seeing much difference on the gauge when I adjust my auto mixture screws. If you recall, I bought new auto mixture screws that may or may not be the right screws. Mike's Carburetor Parts tried to match them up as best as they could for my measurements and my picture. So I'm gonna throw the old one back in there and see if the adjustment works out any better. Okay, situation report. I replaced the new auto mixture screws with the old auto mixture screws, and it really didn't make any difference in anything. So I'm just gonna leave the old ones in there because I'm lazy. So I did throw the timing light on there and found something a little interesting. I checked the time a second ago and it was 13 degrees before top dead center. And I tried to adjust it, but realized that the distributor was actually rusted to the engine. Wouldn't turn. That's a first. But then I just gave up and I cranked the Jeep again and it was perfect. 5 degrees before top dead center. So sometimes you get lucky. Still, I don't know how a distributor rusts to a block. That's a new one. It's interesting. Okay, so the Jeep cranks, idles, runs. Hopefully it'll run under power on the road. We won't know till we get brakes and tires on it. So I got to move on to the next thing, which is to finish the brakes, and I need to remake this brake line. You know, my favorite part about making brake lines is when you get finished, you bend it, you flare it, and then realize you forgot to put the fittings on there. Even though I'm telling you this right now, I will probably do the same thing again today because I'm an idiot. Stuff happens. I've got a 25-foot coil of NiCop or nickel copper tubing, a flaring tool I've never used, and 4 other tools I've never used, but we'll figure this out together. Maybe. All I gotta make is this. Shouldn't be too hard. First step, need to get a piece of NiCop and straighten it out with this Jackham 2000. It works just like you think it would. Straighten the tubing out by hand. Stick the tubing in there and just start stroking. Yeah, just like you would think. The secret here is to get a little twist in there while you're doing it. Good enough. Now we want to cut it off. Obviously we want some extra because I'm going to screw this up at least once. And by the way, I'll leave a link to all these tools and supplies in the description. If you click on the link and buy something, I'll make like 14 cents and I appreciate that. Every penny counts. Bidenomics. Inflation. I gotta say, so far it's going great. I haven't screwed anything up. Got a straight piece of tubing. It might have, oh, look at that. All right. Got to cut. Got to deburr it. Outside and in. Impressive. I'm impressed with myself. All right, let's flare something. Okay, so obviously this is kind of a high dollar flaring tool. I realize not everybody will have this, and that's okay. You can get the cheap ones from Amazon, hardware store, whatever. I've used Amazon, auto parts store. I've used them enough to know that I don't ever want to use them again. The way this one works, you got an operation 0 you do on the tube. You've got an operation, where's it at? Operation 1 you do on the tube, and you've got an operation 2. Then you've got a complete flare. So you put the tubing in. You don't want to tighten this down really. You just want to put it in there. Operation 1 is just going to make the tube flush with the end of the die. So that's done. Tighten it down. Now we're going to go over to operation 1, wherever that is. Oh, it's right there. 3/16. I should have lubed this, but I didn't. It's probably screwed up. And operation 2, where are you? Oh, right there. 3/16. All right, let's see how we did. Probably not great. Honestly, I'm kind of amazed with myself, but it's not perfect. I'm gonna put some lube on here and try it again. Put some fluid on there that was red. I would imagine that's tranny fluid, but I've been wrong before. All right, operation 0. Tighten it down. Operation 1. Definitely felt better with the lube. Operation 2. That's what it's supposed to look like. That's a good looking flare right there. It's tough to get something like that with one of those you rent from the auto parts store. You can get it done. It takes a couple tries, but something like this really makes life easier. But you don't have to have it. Use what you got. All right, now somehow I got to use this to make this look like this. Wish me luck. I'm gonna start with a hard one first, because if I'm gonna screw it up, I want to screw it up right now. It's pretty easy when it's off the truck and you're just matching it up. I'm not gonna lie, I feel like a pro right now. Yeah. Wow. Look at that. The first one's almost perfect. God. Sometimes I even impress myself. All right, only 14 bins to go. Okay, mistakes were made, but here's what we're going for. Our first, where's it at? Our first evolution here, I kinked the tube because I didn't make sure that the tubing bender was pushed all the way forward before I started bending. Yeah, second try at it, bends were good. The tube was too short. Guys like to overestimate things. And third go around, I think we got where we need to be, except I put a 5/16 flare on this end. I don't know, hopefully that will seal. If it doesn't, we'll go for round 4, but maybe it won't leak. Let's find out. This driver's side front brake is whooping on me. Here's the soft line that I took off. Remember, these fittings were too deep and the hose was too long. Not the right hose for the application. This is what Amazon sent me to replace it. Now, a good mechanic would notice the difference immediately and see that 2 female ends, female male. So basically, Amazon's got me trying to go pole to pole instead of pole to hole, the way God intended it. My Jeep don't swing that way, so I had to order the proper brake line. Apparently there's 2 different styles for these things. I don't know. Either way, this is the wrong one. Got the right one on order. So waiting on brake parts again. So let's go work on some tires. Now, I got these bald tires out here that are way too big. And I thought I'd clean them up, you know, because wheels and tires can make or break a rig. But not only are they too big and they're bald, but now 2 of them are flat. Because that one, which one is it? That one. That valve stem tore while I was washing the wheel. And that valve stem broke off completely, hit me right in the chest. Center mass. I could have been killed. So my third favorite thing to do in life is to break down tires without a tire machine. But it looks like I'm gonna be doing that so I can put new valve stems in all the tires. Can't wait. All right, let's work on this busted valve stem. That ain't gonna work. Here's my bead breaker setup. 10,000 pound SUV with a receiver hitch on the front bumper and a high lift jack that never gets used. I refuse to carry a high lift jack on my off-road rigs because they're big, heavy, bulky, and they never get used. And if you're on the trail and ever need a high lift jack, there's gonna be 74 other people that have one mounted to their Jeep that'll be happy to let you use theirs. So mine stays at home and gets used for breaking down tires and making suspension adjustments. That's about it. My rant's over. Let's fix the tire. I would have used the Jeep as my weight, but this excursion weighs as much as 4 Jeeps, so there's no chance of picking it up off the ground. Nope, there we go. So the sad part about this is I actually have one of those tools that you use to pry the valve stem through the wheel, and I can't find it. I guess it's hanging out with my 10mm wrench somewhere. We'll make it happen either way. Just wiggle it. Spit on that thing. All right. Now, let's just spray some ether in this thing and set that bead. Just a skosh. All right. Tire's only on fire a little bit. That's good enough. All right, let's put some air in this thing. Spray it down in here.
Like down there?
Spray a bunch in there, yeah. Now just do it over here. All right, watch this. We're gonna get this tire to come up where it's supposed to be. It's gonna make a big old pop. You better stand back because it'll squirt that water out. Here it comes. Good to go. Okay, so a couple things happened off camera. One, had a mild heat stroke, and two, I got impatient. Not sure which one came first. I put all the wheels and tires on the Jeep, even though we don't have any brakes on this corner or that corner. But before I can throw my kids in the back, I need to address this rust because tetanus is expensive. There, I addressed the rust. I didn't fix it. I covered it up with some 1/2-inch thick horse stall mat from Tractor Supply, and that's gonna be just fine. Also, that's how I'm gonna fix the passenger's front floorboard too, because I don't like to waste material. There's a right way to fix things, and there's the smart way. All right, we need to get this rear seat mounted in the back of the Jeep while we're waiting on brake parts. I had to enlist my kiddos because this is kind of a two-man job. He's gonna spin the bolt up top while I get under with this tapped plate. I don't have my arms aren't, so he'll do it. All right, get up under here. All right, spin it. Now use your fingers to start with. Push down on it and spin it. All right. Hey buddy, that way doesn't tighten it. You got to do it the way where it doesn't make noise. There you go. You don't have to push down on it now, just turn it. Tight?
Yes.
All right, that's good.
You do that.
You did good though.
Okay.
Whoop, that's too much. That ain't going nowhere. Cool. Thanks. You can hop down. Now we gotta do the front ones. Whoop. That ain't attached yet. Still gotta do that. All right, we got parts. We got the appropriate soft line now that has female ends on both ends. And that'll mate up to our male ends the way God intended it. But before I get to fixing that last brake the right way, I wanna do something else the wrong way. Had a pretty wicked exhaust leak or leaks on the passenger side. And I've tracked that down to holes in my header, which I don't want to replace, and holes in my muffler, which I don't have time to replace today. So I'm gonna do what any good redneck would do and use some muffler cement on those areas and then just pray that it holds. Let's act like we're cleaning this up and then fix it the wrong way. All right, I don't want to brag, but I got brakes on all four corners of my Jeep. What do you think about that?
I think it's good.
It's good. Brakes are good, sometimes. Anyway, let me throw that wheel and tire back on and get on to my next proud moment. This exhaust cement hackery. I shouldn't be proud of it, but it is what it is. Done. Well, I'm happy to report my header cement job worked, quietened that down. Now, the cement that I put on the back side of the muffler, it blew out immediately. So that being said, I would say it fixed the exhaust leak 90%. That's good enough for now. I'll buy some new mufflers at some point. But for now, it's time for a bath. I need a win. I need like some instant gratification. So we're gonna break out the Scotch-Brite, some soap and water, and see if we can't make that thing a little less ugly. Maybe. So I didn't even finish washing the Jeep yesterday because a thunderstorm came. I want to move on to the next project. We can finish washing it later. I've always loved the four-wheel drive painting on the tailgate of these Jeeps. So I got a stencil from Kaiser Jeep Auto Parts. I'm gonna spray the cheapest white paint I could find onto the cheapest Jeep I could find. I'm sure it'll turn out great. Obviously we don't want this perfect, because that would not be correct for the Jeep. Well, I was going for a weathered look, and due to my poor stencil and painting skills, that's what I got. I like it. Now I just need to finish washing this thing. Kind of disgusting. Okay, it's been like 3 months. Last thing I did was wash this half of the Jeep. I'm not sure if you can tell the difference, but cleaner, less clean. I'm not gonna lie, the old CJ5 has been a little neglected over the summer, but there's a good reason for that. See, I bought this Cummins hot rod like 2 months ago. It cost a lot of money, and I haven't been able to drive it, so I've been focusing on getting all that stuff straightened out so I could drive that. Hadn't really thought about the Jeep much, but it's an important day, so I gotta get back on it. It's Halloween. Like any good Jeep dad, I had to find a way to incorporate the Jeep into the festivities. So I gotta finish getting this thing cleaned up, check the fluids, and then go drink some candy and eat some beer. All right, folks, it is a proud day. I have just set the record for longest Jeep CJ5 revival in the history of Jeep CJ5 revivals. The last time I did any video on this thing, it was Halloween, and today is March the 8th. That's 308 day for you tactical guys. Anyway, the Jeep's been sitting here for like 3 or 4 months. Since I drove this Jeep last, we've changed presidents and crashed the stock market, but that's okay. I don't get to retire anytime soon. So, here's the deal. The Jeep would not crank, which sucks because we had 2 winter storms here in Georgia that I didn't get to use my Jeep. But yeah, it just wouldn't start. I used ether, I used Go Juice. It would hit about every 943 revolutions. I counted them all, but it was obviously an ignition issue. Now, my standard operating procedure is to overthink everything in the effort to save 20 bucks on parts. But because you can rebuild the ignition system on one of these Jeeps for about 69 bucks, I decided to just shoot it with a Rock Auto parts cannon. And I'm happy to say it worked out well. While you guys weren't looking, I replaced the condenser, the points. What else is in there? Oh, and the rotor button. And I replaced this wire going from the points to the brand new coil. I assumed the coil was going to be an issue since it's hot wired directly to 12 volts from the key instead of going through the ballast resistor. I bought one of those too. But the reality of it is I think it was just this wire going from the coil to the points. Either way, it starts now. I'm going to fire this thing up, drive it around to the garage where my toolbox lives, and I'm going to go ahead and change the plugs and wires while I'm at it. I spent 15 bucks on them. Might as well use them. I have changed a plug and they look the same, so I'm going to do the other 5. They all have a gap. I'm not sure what the gap is, but they're all like 35 thou, so I'm gonna say it's good enough. Get some gloves. My knuckles are too pretty to be bloodying up. I can't mess up my pretty hands. What's the chances that all of these are actually gonna come out? These headers on here. It's a plug. Dipstick's in the way. I'm guessing that's because there's a pair of headers on here instead of some funky manifold. Oh, just pull the whole damn thing out. Let's do that. Why not? Kind of feel bad taking these plugs out. Not sure they really need changing. Oh well, they're like $1.43 a piece. Why not just do it? Halfway there. Too easy. Oh, should probably put that back. Sure did come out a lot easier than it's going back in. I need a light. Where's my light? There we go. Just needed some light. Okay, where are my gloves? Well, that one's a little nasty. Maybe I should just call this thing the parts Jeep. Let's be real. That's about all it's ever gonna be. A lot of parts. This is why I own diesels, so I never have to change spark plugs. I just change a bunch of really expensive stuff instead. $2 spark plug, $300 injector. Last one. I don't know what that wire does, but it's about to break off. Great. Okay. Yeah, I just broke it off. So the Jeep that used to run probably doesn't run anymore. It's better that it broke here, right? What do you even do, wire? That goes to the ballast resistor? I don't. That must be the exciter. So confused. Okay, we can fix that, maybe. Yeah. All of the success has got me out of breath. I use your standard Walmart janky thing to, well, you know, it's not good, but it's better. So it'll probably run. I decided not to change the plug wires, not to install a new ballast resistor, not to change the oil yet, because I gotta wrap this video up. I got this problem about making videos take way too long, and it's been like 9 months. So let's recap what happened. New brakes, bald tires, new battery, new ignition, rebuilt carburetor, air filter with a hole burnt through it that I'll probably maybe change, new back seat. We got tailgate chains and spray paint, headlights, brake lights, rusty floorboards that I covered up with horse stall mats from Tractor Supply, a new ignition, and a cup holder, the most important thing. So, let's take it for a drive. Of course, the most important step, that's what a Jeep's supposed to look like. It's just she'll do the thing. Purrs like a kitten, an odd fire kitten. We're doing exactly what Jeep intended for us to do with this thing when they built it 50 years ago. Ride around the neighborhood on the asphalt and never get it in the dirt. Just kidding. We're actually going to the off-road park in a few weeks, so I guess that's the next episode. We're gonna take our little $1,500 CJ to the off-road park and go play with the $40,000 side-by-sides and see who gets the most attention. So stay tuned. I'm sure nothing will go wrong.